This is James Fox with another video tutorial for QuickBooks Pro 2013. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to void or delete the invoice. Now, before you void or delete an invoice, you need to know what the difference between those two options is. Now, if you void an invoice, the invoice number and the items that were added to the invoice will remain, but there will be no monetary amounts on the voided invoice. The best option that I can think of as to when to void an invoice is, let's say for example you have issued an invoice to a customer and there's something wrong with the invoice. Maybe you put the wrong items on the invoice or the wrong quantity, etc. In that situation, it's best to void the invoice and create a new invoice. Now, the alternative is to delete an invoice. If you delete an invoice, there will not be a trace of the invoice at all in the accounting system. And an example as to when to delete an invoice is, let's say you created the invoice, but once again there's something wrong with it, but you have not issued it to a customer. In that case, it's best to simply delete the invoice and create a new one. So let's first get started with voiding an invoice. If you take a look in the invoice number field, you'll see that there's invoice number 1 and here's invoice number 2. Now I'm going to void invoice number 1. And to do that, click this little arrow just beneath the X and you'll see two options, which are delete and void. And I'm going to select void. Now immediately the quantity has been zeroed out, which also results in a zero balance invoice. However, the items, the customer, the date, and the other information remains. Now click Save to save this transaction and confirm it. Now this invoice will remain in the system. It's going to remain in the system as a zero balance invoice. Now I'm going to move on to invoice number 2, and I'm going to delete invoice number 2. And to do that, click the X. And if you want to confirm that you need to delete this transaction, click OK. Now the invoice has been completely deleted. And if you look in the invoice number field, you'll see the number 3. Because when we deleted invoice number 2, QuickBooks automatically jumped to invoice number 3. If I click the previous arrow here, it's going to automatically jump to invoice number 1 because invoice number 2 was deleted. And since invoice number 1 was simply voided, it remains in our accounting system as a zero balance invoice. Now, if you want to see your voided and deleted transactions, click on the Reports menu, go down to Accountant and Taxes, and select either Voided/Deleted Transaction Summary or Detail. I'm going to select Summary. Now, to view a specific date as to when the transaction was voided or deleted, you need to first set the dates in the From and To Date fields. Now here are the transactions that relate to invoice number 1 and invoice number 2. Invoice number 1 was added on June 8th, 2013 at this particular time. It was voided on June 9th at this particular time. Invoice number 2 was added on June 8th at 8:53 and it was deleted on June 9th at 8:57. So once again, if you need to review the voided or deleted transactions, go to this report and you can see the voided, deleted transactions history. And that is how you void or delete an invoice. If you have any questions, please send me an email. Once again, my name is James Fox, and I'll see you next time.